My name's Jessie Gibson. I'm a technologist at Sum, and today we're talking about analytics. And more specifically, are you tracking the right data? The first website I ever built was a Las Vegas event aggregate site. We just kind of pulled a bunch of events in, shows, all that kind of stuff into one website. But we just kind of slapped in Google Analytics and just called it a day. Google Analytics being one of the most popular web analytics platforms out there. It's basically a one-stop shop that makes it really easy to track everything from your audience acquisition, behavior, conversions. You can track, location of your customers. You can set up goals. You can do experiments and stuff like that. So they really make it really easy to track everything. And if you're launching a new product, it sounds great. Why would you not want to track everything? In my experience, when you start tracking everything, you don't really think about what you actually should be tracking, and what's actually going to drive business. All right, so how do you know you're tracking the right data? While there are some variables and some instances, that'll decide on what you track and how much data you can analyze. How big of a company you have. Are you a startup? Are you an enterprise company? How many people? What are your resources? How many people do you have working on this stuff? But generally speaking, whether you're a startup or an established brand, you really want to start with the customer journey. And that's the moment that a user hits your site. Calls a phone. Makes a phone call to your company, or visits a store or something like that. So here's the funnel. You have awareness, prospecting, consideration. So the first thing you want to track is acquisition. How are people finding your website or your company? Next would be engagement. Once they find your company, how often are they coming back? And then finally conversions. They found your company, they're coming back a bunch. Are they adding? Are they adding products to are they adding products to the cart? Are they signing up for your newsletter? Or are they actually checking out? And all of that. So you kind of follow them down this funnel, and from there you start to trying to build segment the data of the customer journey. Different customers are going to have different journeys, and you kind of want to start segmenting that data into different cohorts. So if your company's reached product market fit, meaning that you've successfully identified a target customer, and then you've served them a product that they've actually purchased, then you really want to track what's behind that aha moment when the customer figures out that they can't live without your product. So that in the aha moment, it's kind of that's the moment when the new user gets really gets your product. So from the aha moment, you can start to look. You basically hooked the customer, and you can start to build out custom buyer personas, or really drill down to what that customer cohort is. So age, kind of occupation, interests, that kind of stuff. A famous example of this is one of these aha moments is Facebook. Time they figured out that if a new user added 7 friends in 10 days, and they were much more likely to stay on the platform than users that did not. So one of their KPIs, every user signing up was to add 7 friends in 10 days. Once you know your target market, you see people are purchasing and stuff, then you want to kind of figure out what those metrics are. You want to track those metrics along the customer journey. So but you basically want to understand the sequence of events that gets someone from never hearing your product to being a brand advocate, or the aha moment where they decide that they can't live without your product. And then once you figure out that customer journey, then the next thing you want to try and do is finding more customers in this target market. But what if you haven't found product market fit? What if you don't actually know who your customers are? I mean, you're getting sales on your website, but you actually don't really know who they are. In that scenario, what you want to look at, you're still getting acquisition and engagement, but then you might want to look at retention, and then you start to segment these different customers coming in that are purchasing into different cohorts, and then you look at the retention to see is there a cohort that or a group of people where the retention never goes to zero. So basically, you're focusing on these users' behavior, to see if you can if there's one group that becomes a brand advocate, they love your product, they always use your product. Focusing on user behavior can really help you identify your strengths and weaknesses of your product, of your company, of your marketing message, whatever. Perhaps one of the most common analytics errors that I've seen brands do is they confuse business objectives, KPIs, and metrics. You really need to define your business objectives first, Then identify the key performance indicators that correlate with those business objectives. And then remember that KPIs are not the same as metrics. KPIs are indicators that measure how successful you are at achieving your business goals. Metrics, like a metric is anything that's measurable. Everything you track is a metric, but not every metric is a KPI. And you really don't want to waste your time analyzing information that's unrelated to your business objectives. If your business objectives change, your KPI should also change. So you want to, every time you set a business objective, you want to revisit the KPIs. The other thing that I like to look at, because I think in marketing sometimes you get lost, it's easy to get caught up in work on the specific taxes and stuff, and so I always like to try and focus on the company's bottom line also. You really forget the big picture. So in addition to tracking marketing expenses and revenue, if you're running paid search, you'll also be tracking return on ad spend or ROAS, or maybe even marketing as a percent of revenue. I always like to consider tracking how that relates to gross profit or income, because I think it just gives you a better holistic view of the business. Yeah, so you really want to watch out for vanity metrics, and these are things that you measure that don't really matter. They're easily changed or manipulated. And they might make you feel good, but they don't really have a direct correlation on your KPIs. Some of the vanity metrics might be social media followers, page views, video views, newsletter signups. If you're a SaaS company, maybe trial customers. And while it might be a good ego boost to track your follower growth, unless unless your business is being an influencer, and you get paid by how many followers you have, then it's not really going to tell you anything useful about your business. And if you look at this chart, so this is page views. Page views is great, but you don't really see. You get picked up by a big media outlet one time. It's kind of manipulated, and you can't recreate that. So it's not really a. You also want to look out for over optimization of KPIs. There's an actual law that I think it's Goodhart's law that states when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. So if you're in a call center, you're trying to increase the number of phone calls, then the quality of the phone calls are probably going to dip, because people are going to try and do everything they can to take as many phone calls as possible. Really, the last thing you want to do is you want to make sure that there's a correlation between the KPIs and your business objectives. You want to really make sure that the metrics you're tracking actually correlate to the business objectives. Now we've kind of talked about what you should and what you shouldn't be tracking, and we haven't got really specific, but it's kind of like the concept of what plan out your business objective, and then figure out those KPIs. But you should be wondering, okay, how do I actually track the data now? I mentioned Google Analytics before, and a lot of businesses use it because it's free. They have a free version, and then they also integrate really well with the other Google products, Google Console, Google Ads, that kind of stuff. But there are other options out there, and many of them let you own your own analytics in a way that Google doesn't. If you're looking to for funnel analysis, for customer journey analysis, you might want to stack of segment with Mixpanel or Mixpanel on its own to get to drill down better into that area. So currently the analytics stack that I'm recommending that we started using, or that I'm starting to use right now at Part and Sum, is it's segment with Mixpanel for funnel analysis. We're still using Google Analytics for the overall web analytics portion of everything, and then we're using Hotjar to for the user behavior, which it literally lets you look at how people are using your website or your product or your what they're looking at, what they don't click on, what they do click on. Kind of wrap this all up. No matter which tools you decide to use, the main thing is you want to figure out what your business objectives are first, and then figure out which metrics are the KPIs that will drive those business objectives, and then only focus on those. And and don't do too many business. You only want a few business objectives a quarter or a year, and you want to be you're kind of laser focus on those, and and then you want to monitor them. Are you hitting those when you move those KPIs, are they actually doing anything for those to those business objectives? So yeah, my name is Jessie Gibson. I'm a technologist at Part and Sum, and that was just a quick discussion about how to figure out the data that you should be tracking. Whether you're starting a new project or trying to optimize a new project. If you have any feedback, I'd love to hear it.